Hi, and welcome to Unmuted. I'm Judge E.J. Russell, and at Unmuted, we want to educate and inform our audience. Unmuted will feature a variety of guests, including politicians, community leaders, entertainers, decision makers, and others addressing news, breaking issues, and compelling concerns to the community and nation. If you would like to contact us, please send an email to unmuted@myyahoo.com. I tell you, today you got a monologue. We're going to do some political potluck. And if you remember as a child growing up, you never knew what you were going to have when your mama said, we're having potluck. So we're going to talk a whole bunch of politics. It's got my head spinning, almost like the little girl whose head was spinning around on, I think it was Poltergeist. And you are watching Unmuted with Judge E.J. Russell. We are on every Thursday at 12 noon Central Standard Time on CW-TV. That's Charlie Whiskey Uniform -TV. We are so pleased that you're here with us today, and we hope that at the end of the show, you will feel that you have been educated and informed. And I hope your head is not spinning like my head is spinning. Well, let's catch you up. The qualifying deadline for all candidates who wanted to be on the ballot later in the year was February 1st at 5 p.m. That was last Wednesday, 1 week ago. All statewide offices, there are 8 of those, as well as the 174 legislative positions are up for grabs, along with your county-wide positions, your state district offices, such as public service commissioners and transportation commissioners. So it's a lot going to be on your ballot. Therefore, you need to get ready, because we are in trying times from a political perspective, and especially in Mississippi. You need to think, I recommend, beyond party politics, but look at what can help your plight in life. We have too many people who vote against their own interests because they are loyal to a party and not to principles. However, let's talk about who's qualified for which one of these positions, so you'll know what your choices are, and hopefully you will be motivated and energized to go out and learn more about the candidates that are running in your area before it's time to cast your ballot. Now, before there's a face-off between political party candidates, such as Democrats and Republicans, there has to be a party primary, and that will happen on August 8th. Remember, August 8th is when you will go to the polls to vote for the first time this year. Everybody's already qualified, as I've said, and they will be coming asking you for their vote. But when people come and ask you for your vote, you need to find out where they stand on the issues that affect you and your family and your kitchen table issues. In the primaries, of course, once again on August 8th, voters who identify as Republican can only vote for Republican candidates running in the Republican primary. On the other hand, if a person identifies as Democrat, they can only vote in the Democrat primary for candidates running as a Democrat in that for that party. And then if there is a runoff, which will be held around August 22nd, August 22nd will be, or is it August? It's either 22nd or 29th. I need to verify that date again. But that will be between the two candidates who got the most votes in the primary held on August 8th, provided that no one gets 50% plus 1 vote to win. Independent candidates. Independent candidates do not have primaries, and all candidates who qualified as independents on or before February 1, 2023 will be on the ballot for the general election. And the general election will take place on November 7th. Voters can vote for any candidate without regard to party affiliation when they go for the general election. So keep that in mind. Just because you voted for in a party primary does not mean that you are stuck with voting for that candidate again if you have determined that that person is not the one that you want representing you in that particular position. Now, here's what we know so far. We know that all 8 Republican statewide officers are seeking re-election, and just 3 of them have other Republican opponents trying to oust them from the very beginning. Now, names on the ballot can impact voter turnout, because if people think that it's a done deal and that their candidate may not have a chance to win, or they think that the person who is already in there has got it won before votes are even cast, then there probably won't be any massive amount of turnout. The primary is in the middle of summer. People are typically on vacation, not fully engaged, and it's hot in August in Mississippi to have to stand in line to vote. Now, there could be a scenario where there is low turnout in the primary, and if voters are not happy with the results, there could be a heavier turnout for a possible runoff. If one happens, or the candidate could up their game for getting out the vote in the runoff. I try to remind you, it happened in the 3rd Congressional District with Congressman Michael Guest and his opponent in the 2021 race, where Guest was behind after the primary, but he energized and mobilized his supporters for the runoff, and he went on to defeat his opponent handily in that runoff race. Turnout is what candidates from both parties will be focused on for the primaries to get a victory without a runoff. When people choose to vote, change can happen. I say that again. When people choose to vote, change can happen. The medical marijuana vote is a recent example that I share with you. The legislature may not have been for it, but the overwhelming majority of Mississippians wanted a medical marijuana program available in the state of Mississippi. So the legislature came right back in session and began work to put that program in place. So when people choose to vote, change can happen. Now, for governor, in the state of Mississippi, Governor Tate Reeves, who is the incumbent, has two people who are running against him in a Republican primary. That's Dr. John Witcher and David Grady Hardigree. David Grady Hardigree. On the other side of the aisle, we have 3 people in the Democrat primary. That's Bob Higginbotham, Brandon Presley, who is a former public service commissioner, Gregory Wash, who's a Democrat, and then Gwendolyn Gray, who is an independent. And remember, we said a little bit further up, Gwendolyn already knows she's going to be on the ballot in November, on November 7th. Now, the Democrats will have to fight among themselves to decide who their nominee will be, and the Republicans will fight among themselves in their primary to determine who their candidate would be. It may be Governor Reeves, and it may be one of the challengers. On the lieutenant governor's race, we've got Delbert Hosemann, who is the incumbent, and he serves as the presiding officer over the state Senate as part of his duties. He's got 3 Republican challengers. That's Shane Quick, Tiffany Longino, and Chris McDaniel. Chris McDaniel currently serves in the state Senate, and he's taking on Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. So they're going to have a hard fight over there. And then on the Democrat side, Ryan Grover, who I believe has run for office. He's up from the Oxford area, and he knows that he will be on the ballot in November. You ask why? Because he's the only Democrat in the lieutenant governor's race. So there will be no need for a primary in that. He will automatically move to the November ballot as the nominee for the Democrat Party. Secretary of State Michael Watson does not have a primary opponent as a Republican, and Shawaski Young knows that he will be on the November 7th ballot as well, running as a Democrat. Now, that name may be familiar to many of you because Shawaski Young ran in the 3rd Congressional District in the race against Michael Guest, who was the incumbent for that congressional seat in the last election cycle. Now, in Attorney General, we have Lynn Fitch, who's the Republican candidate who led the fight to overturn the abortion rights bill. Greta Martin is Democrat, who is running against her. They both will make it to the November ballot because neither has a primary opponent. We're going to take a short break right here, and we'll be back. Welcome back, and thank you for sticking with us or joining us new. You are tuned in to Unmuted with Judge E.J. Russell, and we're talking about our candidates. So we'll move on to our treasurer. The incumbent, David McRae, who is a Republican, has an opponent, Addie Green, who is a Democrat, well known in the Hinds County area particularly, and I think they ran against each other in the last election cycle. For Agriculture Commissioner, you've got Andy Gibson, who is the Republican incumbent, and a Democrat, Robert Bradford. They both know that they will be on the November 7th ballot. So with these folk being uncontested for primaries, they can just begin their strong campaign to be on that ballot in the fall. Now, Robert Briggs, though, is running, and Bethany Hill are running as Democrats against Robert Bradford in that race. And Andy Gibson, the Republican, has just got a smooth sail to the ballot in November. For state auditor, we've got Shad White, the Republican incumbent, running against Larry Bradford, who is a Democrat. And they both will move straight to November. No primary necessary for them. Insurance Commissioner Mike Chaney, who is the longest serving statewide elected official currently in office, has a primary challenger with Mitch Young, who is also a Republican, and they will face off, of course, in August. And Bruce Burton, who is an attorney in and around the Jackson area. He's running as a Democrat, and he will go straight to the November ballot to face whoever wins between Mike Chaney and Mitch Young. Now, for the district attorney's race in the Hinds County area, District 7, we have Jody Owens, who is running as a Democrat. He is also the incumbent, and Darla Palmer, who is running as an independent. There will not be a primary race there because you have a Democrat, and remember we said the independents go straight to the November 7th ballot. So they'll both begin working hard right now to get you ready for that election in November. And the candidates for the Mississippi Transportation Commission, these are the individuals who take care of your roads, bridges, and transportation modes of rail, bus, transits, and trucks. You have Willie Simmons, who is running in the Central District as a Democrat. Ricky Pennington Jr., who is running in the Central District as a Republican. They will face each other in November. No party primary there. Charles Busby, who is running in the Southern District as a Republican. He has no opposition in that race. And then we have John Caldwell, who is in the Northern District running as a Republican. So all those races, the Central has a primary, and the other two will go straight to November for their determination. Public Service Commissioner, we have Brent Bailey from the Central District. He's a Republican. DeKeitha Stamps from the Central District as a Democrat. And I believe DeKeitha Stamps, who is currently in the legislature, ran for this position previously. Mandy Gunaskara is in the Northern District, running as a Republican against Tanner Newman, Northern District, and Chris Brown in the Northern District. There will be primaries right now in both the Central District and the Northern District and the Southern District, where we have Dane Maxwell running as a Republican and Nelson Wayne Carr in the Southern District running as a Republican. So those races are going to be highly contested, but they are the ones who make sure your internet, your broadband and everything is supposed to be working right. I need help in my area, I tell you. Candidates, we've talked about Jody Owens, but over in Rankin and Madison County, Bubba Bramlett does not have an opponent, so I'm sure he's feeling good right about now. And since we are going to talk a little bit more about Hinds County, the city of Jackson, because this is the capital city, it is our urban center, and it is where most of our citizens in the state of Mississippi are located in this area in central Mississippi. Hinds County voters are going to see several rematches this year at the ballot box. We start out with the sheriff of Hinds County. Sheriff Tyree Jones is again facing off against Marshawn Chrysler in the Democratic primary. Now, Jones defeated Chrysler in a special election runoff in 2021 to replace the late Sheriff Lee Vance. The winner of that race will face Reginald Thompson, who also ran in 2021 and in previous years. I tell you what, like I said, my head has just been spinning with some of these races. Now in Hinds County, we have 5 supervisor positions. And for those 5 supervisor positions, we've got 27 candidates running for those seats. District 1, Supervisor Robert Graham, the longest serving supervisor, is facing 2 challengers in the Democratic primary, Lugia Hodge and Eva Chrysler. In District 2, David Archie is being challenged by Anthony Smith in the Democratic primary. Now, if Supervisor Archie wins his party's nomination, he will face off against former Supervisor Darrell McWhorter, who Archie defeated back in 2017. McWhorter made a kind of a smart strategic move this time because he's not running as a Democrat, he's not running as a Republican, he's running as an independent. So he's got a straight path to the November 7th ballot. And David Archie will have to defend his seat from Anthony Smith in the Democratic primary. In District 3, we have incumbent Credell Calhoun, the immediate past president of the Board of Supervisors, in his first term as supervisor. He is facing 2 challengers in the Democratic primary. That's Antonio Porter and Deborah Butler Dixon. If Deborah Butler Dixon's name rings a bell to you, she used to serve in the House of Representatives as a member of that body. The contest for supervisors in District 4 and District 5 may be the most heated, with both incumbents facing numerous challengers. District 4 incumbent and Hinds County Board President Vern Gavin is being challenged in the Democratic primary by Robert Amos, Wanda Evers, Iman Thomas Sr., James Lott III, and Craig Porter. Now, the winner out of those candidates I just named will take on Allison Lauderdale, a Republican, in the general election. In District 5, Democratic primary features 10 candidates, and this seat is currently held by Bobby Bobcat McGowan, along with, now, the challengers are Robert Wall, Ashley Ford, Freddie Schuler, Malcolm Johnson, Dexter Hutton, Darrell Harper, and Joseph Smith. Whoever wins that Democratic nomination will face two independents. That's going to be Chris Biscuit Woodard and Jonathan Pond. Again, those two independents are Chris Biscuit Woodard and Jonathan Pond. That race and the 4th district will most probably have a runoff because there's so many candidates. It's hard to get 50% of the vote plus one. But hey, it has been known to happen. So we'll have to see how that turns out. Now in Hinds County races, for the whole county, we have Zach Wallace, who is the circuit clerk, with no challenger. Eddie Jean Carr with no challenger. County Attorney Gerald Munford has no challenger. County Surveyor Jeffrey Maurice Lewis has no challenger. Justice Court Judge for District 1, Don Palmer, has no challenger. Justice Court Judge for District 3, Frank Sutton, has no challenger. Pearlie Brown Owens in District 5 has no challenger. And then we move to Constable, District 1, Jerry Moore, Democrat, has no challenger. Constable, District 4, Leon Seals, has no challenger. I tell you, they are lucky people, they are blessed people, and apparently people felt good enough about the job that they're doing to say, okay, we'll let them continue. Now, there are a bunch of races, though, that are contested. Constable in District 2, incumbent John Brown, who has been there for a lot of years, has two opponents, Cedric Love and Leon Jones, all of whom are Democrats. So when that primary is over and the runoff, if one is required, is over, then that person has a free pass and doesn't have to even worry about the November 7th election, because there's nobody running against them as a Republican or an independent or a libertarian or any of those other parties. Constable in District 5, newly elected Beverly Wade Green and Larry White are up against each other, and both Democrats, so they'll move on from that race to no opponent in November. Tax assessor Charles Stokes, who is the incumbent, has an opponent, Willie Bob McInnes, and they will face off in the Democratic primary, but then there's no one against them otherwise. Tax collector Eddie Fair and Timothy Lewis, both Democrats, and they, once that primary is over, they won't have an election that they have to face in November, either opponent. And we're going to take another break, and we will be right back to Unmuted with Judge E.J. Russell. Hi, and welcome back to Unmuted with Judge E.J. Russell. Today we're kind of catching you up on all of the people who've qualified to run for office to represent you for the next 4 years. I once again encourage you, if you're not registered to vote, to register to vote. Once you register to vote, I encourage you to be prepared to educate yourself about the folks running for these positions, and then go to the polls and vote, or vote absentee. Whatever you do, don't miss the opportunity to vote, because when people choose to vote, things can change. For coroner in Hinds County, we have the incumbent Sharon Grisham Stewart and Lee Thompson Jr. facing off in the Democrat primary. Once that's over, they are set to take office after the November election. Justice Court Judge, District 2, we have Tabitha Britton Porter and Monique Montgomery, both Democrats, same situation. When the primary is over, they know they have no opponent on the November ballot. Justice Court Judge, District 4, Kenneth Lewis, has an opponent, Joanna Archie, both Democrats. Whoever wins the primary moves to the seat after November. And there was a little confusion, and I haven't been able to sort it out about the election commissioners in Hinds County, who's qualified and who hasn't, because there are a couple of seats where there are incumbents, but I can't find the information from the circuit clerk's office as to whether they have qualified to seek re-election. Now, in Election Commissioner District 2, 4 people are seeking that position. It is the seat formerly held by Tony Johnson. And of course, Johnson was removed from office in January of 2023 after pleading guilty to 3 felony counts in connection with an election grant embezzlement case. But the candidates seeking that position are Celestial Gordon Griffin, Bobby McClure Graves, Richard Cook, and Ratoya Gilmer McGee. Now, Ratoya Gilmer McGee is currently serving as interim commissioner after being appointed by the Hinds County Board of Supervisors once Ms. Johnson was removed from that position. Election Commissioner District 4, Yvonne Horton, has an opponent, Justin Cook. And I can't get the information sorted out for District 3, District 5, and District 1. But as soon as I get that information, I will certainly pass it on. Those are the folk who will be seeking your support to lead in Hinds County and across the state. A number of senators and representatives have opponents as well, and we will talk about that off and on over the next several months. But I want to bring you some information from the Mississippi legislature, and I tell you, this is where my head really, it almost came off my shoulders, I tell you, because, but I want to share with you some good news before I get to the horrible news that ought to have everyone up in arms. But the good news is that the Senate passed the Medicaid postpartum bill that was before them. It would increase Medicaid coverage for a year after giving birth. Right now, there is only 2 months of coverage. But with this legislation, it would expand the Medicaid coverage for up to 1 year. And the feeling is that there are still needs after 2 months when a mother gives birth, and this would provide support and help with the health of both the mother and child up to that year time frame. Now, the Senate has voted for this legislation twice already. However, it has failed each time once it got to the House of Representatives. The Speaker has opposed this Medicaid expansion bill, which is not a massive number of people, and would go to the health and welfare of mother and child. However, this year, it is my understanding that the Speaker has said that if his folk in the House want to vote for it, he will not stand in their way. Now, what his position is on the legislation, though, may decide how folk will vote, but at least he will let it come for a vote. This would be a good thing for him to leave as part of his legacy because, of course, he's not running for re-election to the House of Representatives in 2023. It is supported by the Division of Medicaid as well as the State Health Department. And the Department of Health says that complications and deaths from pregnancy complications have become more prevalent. And a report released by the State Health Department in January of this year shows that Mississippi's maternal mortality rate has risen in recent years. So that is a good thing. Opponents of the bill question whether the extension would improve the state's maternal mortality rate. And all of the experts say that it would. When they were discussing this bill, Senator Barbara Blackman added an amendment, or attempted to add an amendment, which would have done an overall expansion of Medicaid, but that amendment failed. You know, there seems to be, now that was a piece of good news, but let me talk a little bit about all of the bad news as it relates specifically to the capital city of the state of Mississippi. There seems to be an all-out assault on the city of Jackson. We've got, you know, they came for the airport. Now they are coming for the water system. Even though they didn't do a whole lot to try to help with the water system until the federal government dropped in about $800 million. So it almost looks like it's a money grab with the city of Jackson. They want to create a 9-member regional board to oversee Jackson's water system, a regional board now. And the Jackson delegation has said that this is an overreach of the state's authority when it comes to the capital city. The author of the bill is Senator David Parker from District 2. He's a Republican. And District 2 is going to be somewhere up north, maybe DeSoto County or somewhere up in that area, long way from Jackson. But he feels the need to introduce legislation, and it's Senate Bill 2889, to set up a regional board to oversee the city of Jackson's water system. According to all accounts, they want to stop Mr. Hennepin, who has been sent here by the EPA to try to get it on task. They want to prevent him from implementing any of his efforts, and it just really seems like a money grab. This regional board would not be the majority of Jackson's or Hinds County's people on there. The lieutenant governor would have 3 people on there, and the Speaker of the House, I believe, would have 2. That's 5. That's the majority, with a representative or input from Byram and input from Ridgeland. But it's Jackson's money, it's Jackson's city, it's Jackson's system. So why not allow Jackson to have 5 people on the board to be appointed by the mayor? But what's even more tragic about that is it allows or requires the Senate to have advice and consent, which means that if they don't like the mayor's people, all they have to do is vote no. I mean, it is stacked against the city of Jackson. And that board then would decide how the city's system, once again, the state really hadn't put a whole lot into that system over the years. But now Jackson has lost all control of its water. What's going to keep them from sending most of the money to Byram, to Rankin County, to Ridgeland, to Madison County, and still leaving Hinds County in the city of Jackson without the resources they need to help their people? So it's very disconcerting, and people need to be up in arms. You need to talk to your legislators and tell them that it is a simple overreach and a money grab. You cannot depend on the words that come out of their mouth. Then we move on to not just the water system, but then we've got a whole thing that I want to talk to you about, and we may not get to it today, but it's the Capital Complex Improvement District, which is now being proposed to set up a whole appointed set of judges to take care of the business of Hinds County. Hinds County has been asking for an additional circuit judge district forever and a day. And the state has decided that they didn't need one, or they weren't going to put the money in there. But now they want to set up their own little court system, their own little police system, and it probably will not be a good place for people of minority race, regardless, whether you're African American, whether you are Asian, whether you are Muslim. You should be aware of the CCID, which now will be controlled by the Capitol Police and these unelected judges in Hinds County. Taking matters into their own hands to make decisions about the lives of folk who are paying the taxes that's going to help operate this system, but don't have any say in who's elected to be judges in that system. So don't even go in that area, I guess, would be the basic answer. Redlining, areas where you know you're not welcome and not wanted. So we're going to take another break, but we'll be right back to continue talking. Hi, and welcome back to Unmuted with Judge E.J. Russell. And I was just torn between what my last segment needs to be about, but I want to continue to talk about some of the issues that have direct impact on Jackson. But Medicaid expansion, because it is the capital city, because it does have a high population of individuals who live in poverty, Medicaid expansion is sincerely needed. But what I have found very interesting is the story that broke last week with the former university chancellor, Dan Jones, who said that in a conversation a few years back, Governor Tate Reeves said that the citizens would benefit from an expansion of Medicaid. But because of his personal political interest, he could not support it. I say that again. That conversation between those two gentlemen, wherein the governor has allegedly mentioned his support or his understanding of how beneficial expansion of Medicaid could be to the citizens of Mississippi, but because of his personal interest, he has no interest in getting the people the help that they need. Now, when this was leaked last week, or when the press conference was had, the governor's response to it was a tweet talking about this dude. This dude, Mr. Jones or Dr. Jones, had, served as the chancellor once again of the University of Mississippi. He has served in capacities as, as a leader in the state over a number of years. But now, because he has called the governor out, the governor wants to say, call the man this dude. No respect, just this dude. Jones spoke last week in the rotunda, and in less than 5 minutes, he did what most people are afraid to do, and that's to call the governor out on some of his positions, because they're not about helping the people of Mississippi. They are simply about suppression, suppression, suppression. And that kind of leadership attitude, my friends, it's killing the people of Mississippi. When people here have the highest rates of diabetes and heart disease and kidney disease, all of these are things that are killing our folk every day, because in many instances, they can't get the help they need to get the medical attention. If the medical attention were available, if the transportation needs were met to get these people some care, many of them may survive. But because of this non-expansion of Medicaid, once again, I don't care what you call it, the people need the help. And I just want to share with you some of the numbers. 80% of the people of Mississippi favor Medicaid expansion. maybe you need to take your support for that to the ballot box. And you've got a primary. You can deal with it in the primary, or you can deal with it at the November general election. Now, the Republican legislative leaders have killed 15 bills, all of which were filed by Democrats, that would have expanded Medicaid. 15 bills, all dead at this point. And Governor Reed's response when asked about that was, "You have my word that if you stand up to the left's push for endless government-run health care, I will stand with you." Well, the Mississippi Medical Association, from what I understand, the state health officer, all are in support of expansion of Medicaid because they see these people dying because they can't get the help that they need. If Medicaid were expanded in Mississippi, Mississippi would receive $1.61 billion in federal funds for the first year of the expansion, $1.64 billion in the second year, according to a study authored by the State Economist Office. And the State Economist is not a partisan position. The state's top economists forecasted that Mississippi would collect $1.36 billion in year 3, $1.38 billion in year 4, and increasing by smaller percentages going forward. Mississippi could use $1.6 billion for Medicaid expansion. But because it may help some who are less fortunate, our leaders don't want to do it. And it just makes absolutely no sense. And the people of goodwill are going to have to speak at the ballot boxes. You're going to have to call your legislators, call your governor's office, call your folk who are supposed to be leaders and ask them to lead. And it is important, the economists found that the 10% matching cost the state must cover if it expanded Medicaid would be more than covered by health care related savings to the state and new tax revenue generated. Additionally, because of the lack of expansion of Medicaid and people using the emergency rooms for their primary care, you've got a lot of hospitals and a lot of medical professionals who are struggling. They can't keep up because if they're not being reimbursed, if they can't get paid, it's my understanding that there are about 38 hospitals across the state of Mississippi that are in danger of closing or having financial issues right now. As a matter of fact, Brandon Presley, in his response to the governor's State of the Union, made his response from a closed hospital in Mississippi. And I know that there are several on the chopping block as we sit here today and talk about it. People, we are in trouble in this state, and we have our leaders who are trying to turn back the clock on history. And I personally believe many of them are on the wrong side of history. According to polling by the Southern Poverty Law Center, 65% of voters support restoring the ballot initiative process in Mississippi. You know, that's where the people can put a measure on the ballot if the legislature refuses to put a matter on the ballot. But they won't touch it. What the Mississippi Supreme Court determined in 2021, after the voters used that initiative process to put medical marijuana on the ballot and to get 70-something% of the vote in favor of it, that was when the Supreme Court decided that it was an unconstitutional measure. Now, they didn't say that when voter ID was put on the initiative, on the ballot through the initiative process. The Southern Poverty Law Center has recommended that legislators listen to the voters. Mississippi Americans want a ballot initiative. They want to be able to do something, change in their communities or in the state, and this is one means to do so in a ballot initiative. And it's not easy to get a ballot initiative approved, because you've got to get thousands and thousands and thousands of signatures from every one of the congressional districts. And it was working. And if the legislators would do something to simply put it back in place, because for the most part, all it needs is to change 5 congressional districts to 4 congressional districts with some language to adjust the number of districts that you have to get signatures if we lose another seat or if we gain another seat. Now, there is one bill which has survived in the Senate that would restore the ballot initiative, and that bill doesn't allow you to make a change to the Constitution, but only to statutory law. But it does provide, once again, a mechanism whereby you could get things on the ballot if your legislature refuses to act. There's also, there are 2 bills, one in the Senate and one in the House, that would give municipal residents the power to remove locally elected officials if they fail. Under the guise that too many mayors in our states are not effectively accountable outside of election time, and that legislation would allow the citizens to gather signatures, submit a petition, and go through the process to be able to recall those officers. They are the only ones, the municipal area are the only ones where there is no recall provision already in law. But it is critical, once again. I keep repeating myself, but hopefully if I keep repeating myself, you'll hear me and know that you have the power as a voter to make change. You have the power, but you've got to exercise that power. And don't ever think that your vote doesn't matter. Your vote doesn't count. Some of these elections this year will probably be won or lost by 1 or 2 votes. People will make it to the runoff in the primaries by 1 or 2 votes, less than 10 for sure. And it happens every election cycle. Now, we need Medicaid expansion. It may not affect you, but it affects the people around you, and those folk then in turn will affect your quality of life. We here at Unmuted want to keep you informed. You can reach us at unmuted@myyahoo.com. We're going to leave you today, but we will be back with more next Thursday. Thank you so much for joining us.
When you mention agriculture, most people think of farming. That's planting, growing, harvesting, and selling crops grown in a field, laboring in those fields behind a mule and a plow from dusk to dawn every day. This vision is a big misconception and could not be further from the truth. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, the agricultural industry and related industries provide 11% of jobs in America. In 2017, it was reported that 21.6 million Americans were employed in the agricultural industry. Women and minorities are underrepresented in those numbers, and we encourage you to consider agriculture as a career. While farming may be the cornerstone of agriculture, the overall world of agriculture is highly innovative and is so much more than just farming. A new generation of agriculture professionals prepare to take on the science, technology, and management that exist in the world of agriculture. Jobs in agriculture are segmented into 7 basic categories, which include plant science, natural resources, food science, ag business, ag mechanics, and technology. In those categories, you can find individuals working as landscape designers, publicists, foresters, plant doctors, journalists, accountants, veterinarians, farmers, ranchers, lawyers, engineers, pet groomers, loggers, agronomists, zoologists, wind turbine technicians, researchers, policy analysts, food safety, drone pilots, robotics. The list goes on and on and on. Let us take a moment to hear from a few of those professionals who work in ag.
I am Dr. Cindy Ayers Elliott, CEO of Farms, a 68-acre urban farm and ranch here in the city of Jackson. I hold a degree in business administration and finance and a degree in economic development from the University of Massachusetts Amherst and a PhD from the I Love Jackson State University in urban management and higher education. I've worked 26 years on Wall Street, traveling the world. I'm a full-time farmer, growing a variety of specialty crops and raising livestock. I am a farmer.
Hi, my name is Bill Evans, and I'm the Director of Development and Chief Horticulturist at Biosoil Enhancers in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I've worked in vegetable crops for almost 30 years now, running university research farms in Ohio and Mississippi and doing applied soil and crop research. At Biosoil Enhancers, I write grant proposals for field research projects. I also conduct research and farm demonstrations on how bacteria and fungi can help plants get more nutrients from the soil and help conserve natural resources on farms.
Hello, I'm Tanya Gray Jenkins. I'm the publicist and social media director for Footprint Farms. I hold a Bachelor of Science degree in computer science from Jackson State University. As a publicist, I generate publicity through the use of techniques in advertising, marketing, and public relations. My primary duty is brand development through social media. As the social media director, I manage the company's online community by reading customers' comments, answering questions, and actively engaging the audience.
Hi, my name is Dr. David K. Powell. I attended Jackson State University for 2.5 years as an undergraduate, majoring in biology before transferring to Tuskegee University, where I was accepted into the veterinary medical program, becoming a second-generation veterinarian to graduate from Tuskegee's program. I have also served in the military as an Army veterinary preventive medical officer and as a supervisory public health veterinarian with FSIS USDA.
My name is Dr. Kara Woods, and I serve as the research analyst at the Socially Disadvantaged Farmers and Ranchers Policy Research Center that's housed at Alcorn State University. I have a PhD from Tuskegee in Public Policy and Development. I manage all the research that's funded at the Policy Center to make sure that farmers get what they need in the Farm Bill.
Hi, I'm Captain John Martin with the Jackson Fire Department, and I do social media marketing. Social media is an essential component of farming because social media closes the gap between farmers and consumers. Social media marketing helps bring awareness and visibility to surrounding communities and abroad. Your average produce will have traveled at least 1,500 miles before entering your local grocery store. Social media marketing allows consumers to be informed and access better quality food in their local vicinity. Wow. It's so amazing seeing people connect and interact with local farmers via social media.
As you can see, agriculture offers endless career possibilities with endless opportunities for exciting, fulfilling, and profitable careers.